The Galactic Council chamber was a monument to arrogance. Carved from living crystal that had witnessed 10,000 years of history, its walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, each one representing a civilization that had earned its place among the stars. 63 species sat in judgment, their representatives perched on platforms that floated in precise hierarchy. The higher you sat, the more ancient your lineage, the greater your power. Humanity's platform was at the bottom. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the chamber, her dark suit crisp despite the 72-hour journey through hyperspace. Around her, the translation field crackled with barely concealed contempt as alien voices rose in mockery. The humans wished to speak of trade agreements, rasped Lord Zarthan, his chitinous plates clicking with amusement. The insectoid delegates' compound eyes glittered like shattered glass. What could they possibly offer? Primitive combustion engines? Chemical weapons they barely understand. Laughter rippled through the chamber, a cacophony of chirps, growls, and harmonic tones that the translation field rendered as unified derision. Sarah's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. We offer partnership, shared knowledge, a chance to what? High Arbiter Zixasaxa interrupted, his three-tongued voice dripping with condescension. The reptilian leader leaned forward on his throne, which sat highest of all. You have been spacefaring for less than a century. We have conquered entropy itself. What lesson could you possibly teach us? More laughter. Sarah felt it like physical blows, not just the sound, but the deliberate cruelty behind it. This was not debate. It was theater. Humanity had been invited here not to negotiate, but to be reminded of its place. Behind her, the junior diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Torres whispered urgently, Sarah, we should request recess. No. Sarah's voice was iron wrapped in silk. They want us to run. That's the point. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of each delegate. Some looked away. Most did not bother. For 3 years, she began, her voice rising, we have requested fair trade status. We have asked for representation in border disputes. We have followed every protocol, respected every tradition. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. And for 3 years you have treated us like children begging at the adults' table. High Arbiter Zixax's smile was all teeth. Because that is precisely what you are. The chamber erupted in approval, hoots, clicks, and harmonic chords that praised the Arbiter's wit. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Not anger, not shame. Clarity. She reached slowly into her jacket and withdrew a small device, a communications node no larger than her palm. Every weapon scanner in the chamber had analyzed it upon entry and dismissed it as harmless. They were right. It was not a weapon, it was a signal. You want to know what humanity can teach you? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now, but in the sudden silence it carried like thunder. We can teach you what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. She pressed the node. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the sky outside the crystal walls began to tear. It did not crack or shatter. Reality itself warped, folding like paper in invisible hands. The light from Allard Prime's 3 suns bent into impossible angles, colors that had no name bleeding through the fabric of space. The laughter died. Alarms screamed throughout the council complex. Automated defense systems activated, turrets rising from hidden ports, shield generators thrumming to life. But every weapon that locked onto the anomaly immediately lost target acquisition. Their sensors reported the same impossible data. The target was everywhere and nowhere, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. High Arbiter Zixasaxa rose from his throne, his 3 voices united in shock. What have you done? Sarah did not answer. She was watching the sky with the same expression a parent wears when their child takes their first steps. Pride mixed with relief, mixed with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. The tear in space widened. Through. It came something that should not exist. The ship was enormous, 3 kilometers of dark, metal that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Its hull was not smooth but tessellated, each panel shifting subtly as if the entire vessel was breathing. Energy crackled along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Mathematics made visible, equations that bent the laws of physics simply by existing. At its bow, letters glowed in stark white. Earthshaker, the Galactic Council chamber, which had stood for 10 millennia. and witnessed the rise and fall of empires, was completely silent. Sarah Chen's voice when she finally spoke was gentle, almost kind. You called us primitives. You said we had nothing to teach you. She smiled, and it did not reach her eyes. Let me introduce you to humanity's first-dimensional warship. It exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. It can phase through your shields like they are not there. And its weapons, she paused, letting them imagine. Its weapons harvest energy from the space between realities. High Arbiter Zix Saxa's voice cracked for the first time in his 3-century reign. This is impossible. Dimensional theory was theoretical, Sarah corrected. For you. Above them, the Earthshaker rotated slowly, a predator showing its teeth. Mockery had become terror, and humanity's real story was just beginning. 20 years earlier, the project that would birth the Earthshaker began with a funeral. Dr. Samantha Chen stood in the observation deck of Lunar Station Prometheus, watching as another test vessel vanished into the dimensional rift and never came back. That made 7 ships lost, 14 crew members dead, and still humanity's leaders demanded results. We're killing them, Dr. Marcus Webb said quietly beside her. The astrophysicist's hands trembled slightly. He had designed the navigational systems for that last ship. We're sending people into something we don't understand and calling it progress. Samantha's reflection in the reinforced glass looked older than her 42 years. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Silver streaked her black hair. The cost of genius, people said. She knew better. This was the cost of obsession. We understand more than we did, she replied, her voice mechanical from repetition. Each failure teaches us. Each loss brings us closer. Closer to what? A weapon? Closer to survival. She turned to face him, and Marcus flinched at the intensity in her eyes. Samantha Chen had once been known for her warmth, her infectious enthusiasm for the mysteries of the universe. That woman had died somewhere between Test 4 and Test 5, burned away by the same dimensional energies she sought to harness. You weren't at the Council's response to our application for protected species status, she continued, her voice flat. I was, they laughed, Marcus. Not political dismissal, actual laughter. The Zarthan delegate said humanity's extinction would be statistically insignificant to galactic biodiversity. She pulled up a holographic display, her fingers dancing through streams of data that would have looked like chaos to anyone else. To Samantha, it was poetry, violent, dangerous poetry that promised either salvation or damnation. We have maybe 50 years before a major power decides Earth's resources are worth the paperwork of annexation, maybe less if the wrong warlord has the wrong bad day. She looked back at the empty space where the test ship had been. Those 14 people died so that billions could live. I will carry that weight. But I will not stop. The dimensional drive was born from madness and mathematics in equal measure. Traditional, faster than light travel moved through. Hyperspace, a parallel dimension where distances compressed. Effective, but limited. You were still moving through space, just through a shortcut. Samantha's theory was simpler and infinitely more complex. Why move through space at all when you could step between dimensions entirely? Slip sideways into a reality where your destination was your origin, then slip back. The problem was that most dimensions were hostile to matter as humans understood it. Enter one unprepared and your atoms would forget how to be atoms. You would not die. You would cease to have ever been alive. Your existence erased retroactively from the quantum foam of reality itself. Unless you could create a bubble of stabilized space-time around your vessel. A pocket of real space that could exist anywhere, anywhen. 7 failures. 14 deaths. And on the 8th attempt, for exactly 3.7 seconds, test vessel Icarus existed in 2 dimensions simultaneously before its generator overloaded and it rematerialized in normal space. Empty. The crew had vanished. But the ship had survived. Samantha had laughed and cried at the same time. 5 more years of refinement, 32 more tests with increasingly sophisticated AI pilots, only 3 more losses. By year 17 of the project, they could phase through solid matter, appear anywhere within a light-year radius and maintain dimensional stability for up to 6 hours. By year 19, the first prototype warship was under construction. By year 20, Samantha Chen had sacrificed her marriage, her health, and any semblance of a normal life on the altar of humanity's survival. She looked at herself in the mirror some mornings and barely recognized the haunted woman staring back, but the Earthshaker was nearly complete. Governor Elena Rodriguez had never expected to become a warrior. The colony of Nova Prime was supposed to be peaceful, a farming world, a fresh start for 10,000 settlers seeking simpler lives. Elena had been elected governor because she was good with logistics, with managing crop rotations and water distribution, and the 1,000 mundane details that made civilization function. Then Admiral Jaron Kresno's fleet arrived. The Crescent Dominion was small as galactic powers went, but viciously opportunistic. They specialized in claiming undefended worlds, then charging the inhabitants for protection. It was extortion dressed in diplomatic language, backed by ships that could glass a planet from orbit. Kresno's message was simple: submit or die. Elena's response was delivered with the calm of someone who knew a secret. You have 72 hours to leave our system. Kresno had laughed so hard the transmission cut out briefly. When he recovered, his mandibles clicked in amusement. Governor Rodriguez, I have 40 warships. You have farming equipment and desperation. Be reasonable. 72 hours, Elena repeated, and cut the channel. What Admiral Kresno did not know was that Nova Prime had been selected as a colony site for reasons beyond agriculture. Its location placed it perfectly along the dimensional fault lines that the Earthshaker would eventually use for travel. And the farming equipment buried beneath those fields? Prototype weapons that made conventional armaments look like stone axes. When Kresno's fleet attacked on Hour 73, they encountered defensive systems that operated on principles the galaxy had believed impossible, shields that existed partially out of phase with reality, making them effectively invulnerable. Railguns that fired projectiles through dimensional rifts, hitting targets from angles that should not exist. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 38 of Kresno's 40 ships were destroyed. The remaining 2 fled in opposite directions, spreading the story of Nova Prime across the galaxy, faster than any transmission could travel. Humanity's secret was out. The countdown to the council meeting had begun. The silence in the council chamber stretched like a physical thing, thick and suffocating. High Arbiter Zix Saxa was the first to find his voice, though it cracked with uncertainty. This is a trick. Holographic projection, human desperation made visible. But even as he spoke, his crest, which flared only in response to genuine threat, was fully extended, scales bristling with evolutionary alarm. Sarah Chen did not respond immediately. She was watching the readings on her communication node, monitoring the Earthshaker systems with the calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind. Finally, she looked up at the Arbiter. Would you like a demonstration? Absolutely not. The shout came from Ambassador Velshara of the Pelthic Confederacy, her crystalline form resonating with panic. You cannot use an untested superweapon inside Allard Prime's atmosphere. One malfunction could... It's been tested extensively, Sarah interrupted, her voice soft but carrying through the amplified chamber. 3 years of live-fire exercises, 17 successful dimensional translations, 0 catastrophic failures since the prototype phase. She smiled thinly. We are not reckless, Ambassador. We are thorough. Lord Zarthan, who had mocked her minutes earlier, spoke from his platform. His translator rendered his clicks as careful, measured words. The universal signal that an insectoid was thinking faster than they wanted to show. How long? How long have you been developing this? 23 years, Sarah replied. Since the day your predecessor told our delegation that humanity's concerns were too primitive to waste council time on. She pulled up a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber, a EE timeline punctuated with data that made several delegates lean forward despite themselves. Every rebuff, every dismissal, every time you laughed at our scientists or ignored our warnings about border raiders. The timeline highlighted each incident in cold blue light. We were watching, learning, and building. Dr. Samantha Chen's face appeared in the hologram, aged and exhausted, recorded during one of the project's rare press updates. Her words played for the council. We asked for protection. They refused. We asked for fair trade. They refused. We asked to be treated as equals. They laughed. So we stopped asking. We stopped waiting for someone else to value our lives, and we started building the tools to ensure that whether they respected us or not, they would never again be able to ignore us. The recording ended. The silence that followed was different now, no longer shock but calculation. Every species in the chamber was reassessing, running new simulations of galactic power dynamics in their enhanced cognitive systems. High Arbiter Zix Saxa descended from his throne, an unprecedented act. In 10,000 years of council history, no arbiter had ever left their seat during session. He approached Sarah slowly, his size, 3 meters of scaled muscle and predatory evolution, meant to intimidate. Sarah did not move. "You realize," Zixasaxa said carefully, "that this changes everything. The balance of power, trade agreements, defense pacts, everything we have built for millennia." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "it does. And you expect us to simply accept this? To let humanity walk in and overturn the entire galactic order?" Sarah's expression softened, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she looked less like a diplomat and more like what she truly was, a woman who had carried an impossible burden for far too long. "We don't want to overturn anything, High Arbiter. We want a seat. A real one. Not at the bottom of your hierarchy as a joke, but as partners who have proven we deserve to be here." She gestured to the Earthshaker above. "That ship? It's not for conquest. It's for protection, so that no one, ever again, can look at humanity and decide our survival is optional." Zixasaxa studied her for a long moment. His third eye, which typically remained closed, opened slowly, a gesture of seeing truth beyond deception. "Show me," he said finally. "Show us what this ship can do." Sarah nodded and spoke into her comm node. "Earthshaker Actual, this is Ambassador Chen. Authorization Dimensional Dawn. Execute pattern Delta 7. Above them, the massive warship moved, but moved was the wrong word. It did not thrust or accelerate. It simply stopped being in one location and started being in another, a 3-kilometer vessel that teleported, 200 kilometers in the space between heartbeats. It appeared over the Council's defensive fleet, 300 warships that represented the combined might of 63 civilizations, not threatening them, simply existing above them. A statement made manifest, then it phased. Its hull became translucent, ghostly as it shifted partially out of their dimension. Weapons locked on couldn't maintain target. Sensors reported the ship was simultaneously present and absent. Quantum uncertainty made macroscopic. And then it was back where it started, solid and whole, as if it had never moved at all. The Earthshaker hung in the sky like a dark promise. This is what humanity can do. Imagine what we will do if you force us to. High Arbiter Zixasaxa returned to his throne slowly. When he spoke again, his voice carried no mockery, no derision, just the tired wisdom of a leader who recognized when the world had changed beneath his feet. "The Council recognizes humanity's petition for full member status. All in favor?" The vote was unanimous. As the chamber erupted in frantic diplomatic activity, species scrambling to be the first to establish favorable relations with humanity, Sarah Chen allowed herself a small, private smile. Governor Rodriguez would be pleased. Dr. Samantha Chen could finally rest. And humanity? Humanity had just taught the galaxy its most important lesson. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never confuse silence for acceptance. And never ever underestimate a species desperate enough to tear holes in reality itself.